Awesome. Welcome everybody to the live chat tonight. Um, so we have some very special guests tonight on the show, and that is AJ and Tiffany Mensah. And so we're gonna have a good time tonight, and we're gonna learn and unlearn some things. I think that's part of what our post says we're gonna do. And let us know if there's like background noise or something like that. You can't hear us because we want to make sure this is very clear for you. Um, with that, thank you guys for joining us, Mrs. And thank all of you who are watching us either on Facebook. Well, actually, it is Facebook. We don't have anybody in the Zoom chat, right?
No.
So all on Facebook. Good. So if you have questions as we move along, please drop the questions in the comment. And as we get to the end of the conversation, we'll start posting or asking some of those questions that are posted. And so, hey, this is interactive. So, hey, give us thumbs up, hearts, wild faces. If you're mad, you can hold that one. Just to encourage us. Also, when you are doing that, it's letting other people know that we're live and may attract them on over here so they can get some of this goodness. All right. And we are going live on Kendra's wall. It is also shared on my wall and our partners, the Bullocks, it's on their wall as well.
Yes.
So if you do grab it, please share it out and let your friends know about it. All right, with that, we like to start off with the, what is it called?
The couples quiz challenge or something.
Quiz challenge, yes. So that's what we're going to start off with. So we're going to ask you some questions, AJ and Tiffany, and you got to close your eyes, and then you got to point to who you think is most likely, the one for that particular question. So you ready?
Yep.
All right, eyes are closed.
Close your eyes and bow your head. I'm just kidding. All right. Most likely to stay in your PJs all day during this quarantine. Most likely to work out. Most likely to binge watch TV. The messier one. The funnier one. The most romantic. Apologizes first after a disagreement. Most likely to cook. The most spontaneous. Takes longer to get ready to leave the house. And more outgoing socially.
All right. I think
was that 100%?
Yeah, I think that was 100%. You both know each other pretty well. So awesome. That was awesome. So thank you. So for those of you who are just now joining us, we have this marriage group called Living Well Today. So we started this conversation series called the Love4Real conversation series because a few years ago, I think it was, Daniel came up with this hashtag because there's a hashtag relationship goals. I'm sure everybody has seen that hashtag, right? And to me, whenever I would see the hashtag, it was always showing the best parts of relationships, never the stuff where you all were truly having to figure things out and really the real stuff is what I'm saying. And so we had an event with that name, and now we have this series that we thought it would be great to bring on couples to talk about different topics, specifically right now during this time of COVID-19, where couples are spending more time with each other than they ever have before. And for this month of April, what we've been talking about is how do you create a safe space for your spouse? And then there's different topics we've talked about. So we've talked about finances. We talked about spiritual leadership. We talked about your job search. But today, what we're going to talk about is something that I have been wanting to talk about for a really long time, but we wanted to be careful to bring on people to help us kind of walk through this, talk through this, and navigate this people that we felt would really have the experience to be able to support couples in this way. And so then in comes AJ and Tiffany Mensah. And both of them have some amazing stories that we're going to have them tell you about. And what we really want you all to be engaged. We want you to leave comments. We want you to ask questions of them. The first part of our discussion tonight is just us really interviewing them, asking them these questions. And then the second half will give you all the opportunity to have your questions answered. And so Tiffany and AJ, welcome to our Love4Real conversation series. Would you all both just start off by talking to everyone a little bit about who you are and how you got to this season of life, married life?
Hello. We started off as friends. He was the homie. Like, I never thought you was gonna be my husband because we was just that cool. And literally how our journey happened was like the scales fell off instantly. And he had confirmation, I had confirmation. And after a month of dating, we got married right after. And it was a little challenging because I still lived here in Phoenix while he was in Detroit. So we're originally from Michigan. And for 2 months until I could get relocated back, we were long distance, but we saw each other every other couple weeks, right? And it wasn't until life showed us who we are, show us who you are, when we moved in. So that was when the big 18-wheelers semi pulled up to his house in June of 2015, that your wife is here, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And,
with everything.
And though we knew so much about each other just from the friendship and the foundation, and we talked about a lot of who we wanted, what we wanted our marriage to be. We did a lot of conversations of upbringing because, quite frankly, I had some knuckleheads. And now that I was 6 years into my counseling journey, I knew what I did and did not want. And so I don't want to know just about your credit score. I want to know, so can you tell me how you were brought up? Can you tell me about your past? Can you no, not the cute stuff. Please tell me like the real, the ugly. I want to know as I share with mine. And one of the things that we were intentional about was we will not be typical. And because of us sharing, we said we wouldn't shrink in. We wouldn't turn away from each other.
Mm-hmm.
We put this is what we're going to build on. It was the other stuff and the new triggers that we didn't know about. So I'll let my hubby talk.
Yeah, that's a good word. Triggers. I got to write that down. Mm-hmm.
What you talk, I mean, it's one thing to actually speak to each other because at least you have a foundation or a plan for a foundation. Let me say it like that. Your blueprint is set. But the actual act of putting that together is easier said than done. You really have to both have the mindset of we're going to work together. It's going to be energy. It's going to be friction. You know what I'm saying? But you guys as a couple, we as a couple make the choice to use it as positive energy instead of negative energy. And it's a learning process on that because like learned behavior, negative defaults, things like that, we start out with that until you practice more about talking. Now, you know, when a person says, well, I want us to have that conversation, I want us to talk and communicate, that sounds really good. But the act of getting to that point, that's a journey. It doesn't have to be the hardest journey, but it's a journey. So we had to learn how to talk to each other without getting upset, without thinking that you're throwing jabs at me, and, you know, things like that. It's like, no, we're coming from a good place, even if it sounds a little rough in the beginning.
So speaking of that, we in those initial intake questions.
Intake. Did you have a form? Tiffany was like, nope.
So okay. All right. And then it's like the initial questions, and then there's the drill down to the drill down question. Like, oh, that's a whole nother layer. Let's dabble down that lane a little bit. And that's how it went. We when it comes to communication, and we've been a lot of like those, they're like the communication styles with couples. There's the one that's straight to the point, and then there's the one that goes all the way around. And in me going all the way around, I shared with him basically my whole life story, and that I grew up in a home with domestic violence, and challenges that I dealt with relationships prior, where I was in my life. And he shared that he was also a product of broken home domestic violence, but his mom divorced his father before he could really see it. But his experiences were more so to the after product of it, right? And in sharing, one of the things that we both aligned on was we don't want to argue. We don't want any arguing in our marriage. So now that we're living together, because everything is great when you 1,600 miles away, you FaceTime every day is what we miss you. I love you. Yeah, now that we face to face and our comes up, the initial triggers that I started seeing was like, AJ's direct. Not in a bad way, but I was very sensitive to tone that I didn't know. So when he would just be direct, I heard my daddy's voice.
Yeah.
And it took me back to little girl Tiff, and it took me back to those memories of, I don't want this to escalate into a fight or anything. Not that I don't even think he's gonna hit me, but I don't want it to get even louder. And he would continually say like, no, like, I'm just telling you, like, but it's the way you're telling me. But then it's like, I gotta be assertive with my voice to like let his voice, like his tone, like my tone is trying to match his tone, and I'm not standing down.
He would say things like, I don't want you yelling at me while she was yelling at me. So I had to bring that to her attention. I was like, I hear you, but babe, don't you know you're escalating? At the same time, you're telling me to de-escalate, so I mean, and it's different learned behaviors that we both were willing. See, both people got to be willing to go down the journey. It's harder.
Yeah.
One person I want it to be a great, happy marriage, and the other one is not truly on board. What I'm saying?
So AJ, so I can hear Tiffany pretty well. You are probably need to come a little closer to the mic.
Yeah, we can, so that way we can hear you a little bit better.
Y'all can hear me better?
Yeah, somewhat. Yeah, I don't know why. Is it like?
Are you on your phone? Are you talking from the computer?
I'll use my television voice. Is this better?
It does.
A little better, yeah.
It does seem like it is a little bit better. So let me ask you guys this. So before we go too far down talking about when you guys, once you actually were already living together, so both of you, how old were you when you met each other?
He loves to say this. Go.
When we met, I was 27 and he was in his 30s. Right? No, in the 40s, early 40s.
Okay. And then how did you meet each other?
At church, in the choir.
Okay. So did you know, like, when y'all met each other, y'all were in the choir together. So you guys are both in church, right? You were both in church. For you but you didn't, at that time, you didn't know the household that you both had grew up in was similar, right?
Right. Because one, I didn't want no church to do. Because also my father's a preacher.
Yes.
No, I didn't want that. And when I finally noticed him, because it was his comedy that made me laugh and get in trouble.
Yeah.
I inquired about him, and the voice in my life during that season was like, no. Like, all right, cool. Because again, I'm on a healing journey. I'm on a healing path. I'm being accountable to these voices. So I just let it roll on. But we continued to keep our friendship through the years, and he, like, comedy between us both. And on top of that, we talked about everything, about dating, about Christ, about he ended up having cancer while we were friends. So we got even closer with that journey and his health. So
So you guys became friends first then. So you had built a friendship. And how long would you say you were into the friendship when you started to have some kind of romantic feelings for each other?
It was toward the end of our it was like we were friends for 3 years, and I have to give you the timeline.
Yeah, yeah.
January is when the scales came off. There was an emotional moment. I was sad. He never saw me cry. He gave me a hug. He gave me the forehead kiss. You know, best man if y'all seen it. And he's like, I just wanted to make my friend feel better. And that was the first time the scales came off of my eyes. Like,
AJ, you pulled out the forehead kiss. Okay.
But she was sad, and I mean, we had been on the phone talking about a lot of different stuff. She was like, with me, I sang lead at the church, and it was open and blatant, like, attraction from women in the congregation. So I would always talk to her about that because her father was a worship pastor. Godfather, excuse me, was a worship pastor. And, you know, so we got close. She knew a lot about me. And in that time, again, I hear we're always laughing. We're always going back and forth. And this was my first time genuinely seeing her sad about something. And that didn't help me. So, you know, I asked her what was wrong. She told me. And then I just, you know, kind of leaned over her, kissed her on the forehead. I said, it's going to be all right. And again, this was my friend. I would have never done anybody else. I did when I came up there the second time. But I would have never done that to anybody but Tiffany because how close we were. It's like, it's going to be all right, you know. And I was actually in the rehearsal. So I went back downstairs to rehearse, you know, while she
and I forgot the whole reason of the forehead kiss and took me out of my assignment on why I was there. I'm like, oh, hey, can you come back?
You were all distracted, right? So then you guys start to have these romantic feelings for each other, and you make this decision to start dating.
He didn't.
Oh, he didn't.
He didn't. He was just being a friend.
Look, this is how I found out Tiffany liked me. What was it? Super Bowl was down here.
Super Bowl was down here.
And she had got tickets from her employer that gave her some great seats to the Super Bowl, and she wanted me to go with her. And of course, I wanted to go, and you know, we were investigating the tickets, which was astronomical at that time. But
I ended up not being able to go.
She said, "Do you want?" No, me being silly. This is how I put it. Messing with
press pause,
girl.
Press pause. I said I couldn't go anyway. I had to go out of town. So I was like, I'm donating it to a store. And I was like, I wouldn't have wanted to go with anyone else but you.
Right. And so, right. She did say that. And I said, so, what I say, do you want to go with me? No, I said, do you want to go with me or do you want to go with me? But I was totally just being funny. And there was this long pause. And I was like, wait a minute, you're thinking about that. I was like, you like me like that? Another long pause. Then she gave me this dissertation.
Just hold on before the dissertation. I wasn't a thirst bucket, all right? After that night, when I had the forehead kiss and hug, on the way back home, I prayed a prayer like, Lord, if this is your will, he gonna have to come. You already know how your girl is feeling right now, right? You made me. And if this is your will, then he's gonna have to come a whole different way than I've right. So that was a week between that communication, and as I started thinking more about what I wanted in a man, what I wanted for the future, AJ aligned with that list, and I was just submitted to God. And during that time, we kept communicating. This is friends. Never told him, and then came the dissertation. Yeah. And yes, during the dissertation and all of that. After the dissertation, he basically was like,
no, a little bit more than that, because I was scared to lose our friendship. What if this didn't work out? Then you're my homie. We've been talking. We've been cool. We ain't never had nothing come between us. Why are we about to mess this up? That was my attitude.
Yeah.
Not just like she had a list. I had a list. And it took a friend of mine at work. When I was talking to her about it, I called her one of my godmothers. You know, my spiritual mother's from church work. And she said, AJ, when I was walking away perplexed, because I was really thinking about, should I do this? She said, what if it's God? And at that moment, I started thinking about the list that I had, and then a whole lot of other dots connected, and I was like, okay, well, maybe this is it. And after checking the list, it was like, okay, I'll give it a whirl, and the confirmation from God came shortly after too, like to just pin it in, and I was like, okay, I'm with it. So strong, where well, I just called her up. I was like, okay, I've been thinking about it, and I'm your man. Say it with me now. Oh man.
So this was 3 years into your friendship, right? Yep. 3 years into friendship.
44.
Mm-hmm. Right. Okay. So you were in your 30s, Tiffany. AJ is in his 40s. So you all have lived some life at this point, right? And that means when you're that age, you also have your own routines, your own patterns. You have things that you like things a certain way. You've already established that. You have lived a little bit of life. Unlike me and Daniel, when we got married, we were babies when we got married. So
similar.
We really were. We didn't even realize how much of a baby we were at the time. So when you make this decision that you're going to get married, so you make the decision that you're going to get married, what does your process look like as you kind of count down to married life? How do you kind of make sure that this person is the person that you want to be with?
Me personally, I follow God.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mean that as some sort of cliche saying. I mean literally, God had been prepping me prior to this about things. And he was just like, you know, you read a scripture and you know what it is, and read it again, and one day it's the same scripture, means the same thing, but you got this bigger understanding of it. And he was dropping things down, and what happened was I had got a divorce. It had been a year, and I finally decided after that year I was going to kind of put my head on the swivel.
Yeah.
I had been looking around, things wasn't really working out, and I was, my relationship with God is so close, and I said, you know what? I said, I've been so disrespectful. I have not even asked you if you wanted me to get married. What if this is, my experience with that was it, and now you got something totally planned for me differently. And I said to myself in the car driving to work, if that's what you want from me, and I meant it wholeheartedly, if that's what you want, I'm fine with that. And from that moment, different things just start opening up to me. But I was really prepping me to. And I just trusted God like throughout the whole process, because once these confirmations kept coming, and I would tell her, but because I knew that wasn't me thinking those things, that Holy Spirit was dropping things down on me that was actually happening, that was actually coming true, I just trusted the process. I was like, I believe you. And any doubt that I had with myself, or maybe even in Tip, I just let it go. I trusted God with this process.
And the same for me. So mine was, because again, I'm your man now, was totally like, what? Okay. I kept praying, and God, show me your will with this. And it's just confirmation after confirmation. And even our conversations, like, yes, they're cute somewhat, but our conversations were just so deep about like our past, and so deep about like future planning. And we were so committed to God's way. And I traveled back home a lot for work, like every other couple months. So by that time, and my test was, I was 6 years. Oh yeah, you got tested. You know it. I was celibate for 6 years. And the guy I was dating, or who was trying to, I would throw that, I'm not having sex until marriage. Man, it was like, never mind. Yes, save me time. Thank you. I don't have to get invested. None of that.
Yeah.
Him as my test, like, all right, here we go. Yeah, and you a church boy? Let's go. He was like, okay. And like that don't bother me. Like, I'm committed to Christ. You committed to Christ. We gonna do it right so that we had that life more abundant. I was like, we'll walk it down. We'll see. But our conversations over the next month, between the time I had to fly back home, were so heavy. Just like, I also didn't tell anyone really about AJ and what we were doing. And so it kept my ear gate clear, hear Holy Spirit and now their opinions. And when we decided, I was like, I'm coming up there, and I don't want to make any appearance for sin. Like, I don't want to slip, fall, none of that. But I want to spend time with you. Like, I was like, let's get married. Now, well, he proposed first, but we try to stay on task, y'all. He was like, we can get married in August. I said, let's get married in March. I don't want to leave temptation room. People like, oh, she's staying at AJ house. Oh, no. We went the right way, and we went to the courthouse. Like, we could, like, confident about this, and we confident about Christ. Then God has us. He's ordering our steps, and we gonna walk it down. And here we are 5 years later.
Yeah, amen. So you, the two of you have been married for 5 years. Yay! And here you are, 5 years into marriage. You both grew up in these homes where you did not necessarily get a healthy example of what marriage looks like. So now what I would love to hear you talk about is what was immediately clear to you, that because there's some things that even when you're dating, you're not going to know until you marry a person, right? But once you get married, there are things like your eyes are like wide open at that point, right?
So
yeah,
before we go there, I want to know. So we understand that you both grew up in homes where there was domestic violence. So, and what did that do to your approach to marriage? What kind of thoughts were running through your head as you are getting close to marriage or saying, yes, I want to get married? Did any of that affect or hold you back or cause you to make certain decisions before you got
married? So with my situation, my parents were married for 30 years. Through all of that. And what
you said 30 years?
Years.
Okay.
That were married 16, 17. And there were good moments. There were great moments. That was like, yes, like I wanted the good, but I did not want that. And I made the choice. This is not going to be my marriage, not going to be my relationship. But for making that decision as a teenager, I was walking in that with relationships. Either I was verbally abusive to dudes I was dating, or I was being manipulative with power and control because I'm making the money and you're not going to have a voice. But until I went to counseling to see that that's what I was doing and I was subconsciously falling into those patterns, I had to go through, again, it was 6 years of counseling journey to do that work, to know those triggers, to get my headspace clear, to understand. And there was a guy before AJ where everyone thought we were going to get married. We talked about it, but nah, like it wasn't. I had went through all of the scrubbing to know what I truly wanted in a marriage, a Christ marriage. I had been around examples at this point of what a godly marriage looked like, what healthiness looks like from other couples as my example. So I had in my head, that's what I wanted. And even the fun times that I grew up in at my house, I wanted those fun times, and I was trying to craft those into our marriage.
And with me, the result of, I didn't see the domestic violence. My mother divorced my father when I was 1 year old. So we moved, we went on our own. But what I didn't know was she carried that, that experience.
Yes. Yes.
She loved her son. But at some point in time, when she left my dad, she was saying to herself, I'm not going to let another man control me ever. I'm not going to have myself in that situation. But because her trauma was so deep, after her son became a certain age, she didn't see me as her son. She did. But she saw me as a man that would be trying to run her household after I got a certain age, after I became a certain strength. So I was controlled physically to a great degree. And I was controlled when I became stronger than her. My mother told me again that later on in years, but that she controlled me mentally. And I despise that. So any type of controlling me, is for me. Like you know what I'm saying? And so going into marriage and already being in one before, kind of knowing myself a little bit and again, trusting God, I tried my best to allow Tiffany to understand that about me, but I was also willing to become something new. You know what I'm saying? Because not all that was for me was negative learned behavior.
Yeah,
okay.
That's good.
Thanks for sharing. That's good. That's good. Okay.
All right. So what are some of the things that you, like I was saying, that you like really quickly, you talked about some of the triggers that you realized that both of you had, and let's just, whether you have grown up in a home with domestic violence or not, we all have triggers, right? We all have things that trigger us, right? So, but how did you have like some type of agreement with each other, knowing what your past history was, with the home that you grew up in, everything, where you had these conversations about how you were going to communicate with each other, what was acceptable, what wasn't acceptable? Did you have those kinds of things to help you in those early years of marriage?
Well, we did I mean, it wasn't a big, heavy amount of that.
Mm-hmm.
We still learning, like, of course, right now, how to deal with those particular triggers. Because a lot of times you don't even know that it's there until something comes around that tells you that it's there. For me, one of the things to give my wife grace and patience, I think everybody say Ephesians 5:23, where they say, love your wife like, love the church.
Mm-hmm.
Because I didn't grow up in the church, I understood that, but it didn't go deep down in me. But when I went down a little further, 33, Ephesians 5:33, when it said, husbands, love your wife like you love yourself, that became clearer to me. So I want to be understood. I have to understand.
Yeah.
If I want patience, I have to be patient. If I want to be loved, I have to show love. See, that's what that resonated in me. So I have conversations with myself. It's like, hey, are you showing that love? Because this is what you promised her, not just her, but you promised God that this is what you do with your second marriage. So,
and we said divorce wasn't an option.
Most definitely.
We said that we would not withdraw from each other, because I told him I have a habit of like shutting down. And I shut down. Which was, and again, we end up going to counseling 6 months in. And it wasn't because we were even that bad. It was, hey, I've been to counseling. There's some new stuff going on. Can we go together? And like, you can talk to my counselor. And my counselor was a little leery on it too, because he said, like, I don't want it to seem like I'm having a bias. So he was great with communicating to AJ, like, I'm team y'all. I'm only phrasing this from what I've learned with her. I'm not on her behaviors. Like, I'm not on her side. But he was able to give AJ a lot of insight that I didn't even know how to communicate. Like, I would think, like, this is what it is. And a lot of that was, even though we said those things, like you said, those new triggers came where I know he's a safe space and he's a manly man. But I didn't know how to handle that direct tone. His voice, when he would give me guidance, I thought he was trying to control me. Like, it would take me back to little Tiff, who's in that house. And because I'm like, yeah, I'm the strong, independent woman.
Mm-hmm.
What we're not going to do, and I want to give this. And that's how we knew, like, hold on, that's not what we talked about. And like, we didn't know what to talk about to even know to include that, if that makes sense. It just, like, it kept rising up. And even when he's just trying to give budget advice, because he's like, we're gonna be debt free, and I like, can you not spend that? And I'm like, but I want my DSW. Like, I'm contributing to the household as well. Like, why are we not? But again, financial abuse. So I don't want to go to this rabbit hole where it's just all your money, it's just all my money, it's our money. Like, do I have a say so? But it was, though he meant well, I was hearing my dad.
Yeah.
So Tiffany, when did you start going to counseling, and what was the catalyst for you to say, I'm going to go to a
Started going to counseling September 2009, because childhood Tiff kept showing up in the boardroom. Where I had issues with male leadership, though I was rocking it out in corporate. The only identity I had was in my job, because I was in failed relationships with dudes. There was a lot of family drama. I blew up on leadership at our old church during that time, male leadership, because it was like I had no respect. I had no lines. Because I kept seeing my dad in everybody. And I almost lost my job. And it was a great corporate job, been there since graduated college. And my boss at that time had enough patience with me to be like, you need to get it together or I'm gonna let you go. And I had to have a conversation with self. It's like, tell yourself the truth. And everyone can't be saying this about it in the church circle, in the family circle, in the job circle. Okay, Tiff, you need some help. So it was one of those where I had to come to Jesus conversation. And it's like, I want to get help. I don't know what this is because anger just lives in my family. We turn up. Like,
yeah.
So, and I was the most angry out of all of my siblings and even like my family, where I felt like I was always fighting for my mom in the back of my head against anybody. I'm gonna tell anybody about who you are. And when I prayed that submission, like I really want to change. I really want to repent. How do I do better? Legit got an email about this healthy communication conference, and my counselor was there with his co-counselor. And I'm like a sponge. I'm a little nerd too. I get excited about conferences. So I'm like, ooh. And I'm asking all these questions, and it's in a church. And ultimately, I said, well, what if you grew up in a domestic violence home and your father is the preacher? Like, how do you heal from that? Because he had made a point that the way you view God is how you view your earthly father. Mm-hmm. And that's when I jumped in with that. And the way he handled it, regardless of the stares and the big eyeballs in the church, I was like, I want to go to counseling. Can you be my counselor? And that was my breaking moment.
That's awesome.
Wow. And so you have carried that all the way through your marriage. You've done that all the way into the marriage and even invited AJ in. Mm-hmm. Wow. And the reason I wanted to hear your story where that's concerned is because I think counseling is viewed as something that's it's got a negative connotation to it in a lot of circles. Mm-hmm. And where I've heard other couples that have gone to counseling and it was just like, we just needed to learn how to communicate, right? It wasn't because we had a bad marriage. It was just we weren't seeing eye to eye and we couldn't get on the same page. We kind of went to financial counseling ourselves, where we had to bring in a third party to get us on the same page.
A mediator.
And, that's what I would say. If you find yourself as a married couple constantly battling a situation, right? It may be time for you to seek a third party to come that's professional, that can help you to navigate to the same page.
I think it only works though if both of you are honestly willing to go for a positive change. If you're not going because you are open and you've already said yes to the situation, yes, wholeheartedly that I want it to be different, it's kind of defeating the purpose, because sometimes you're going to hear in there that your way of thinking is wrong. You know what I'm saying? That doesn't mean you guys aren't going to come up with a solution to get it right. But don't feel like they're attacking you, or she just on his side, he just on her side, or vice versa. It's about, let's listen. And, sometimes it's question like, well, if you think like that, why do you think like that? Because sometimes, most of the times, a lot of our, I like to call them false expectations and negative learned behaviors, come from things that we don't even know that they were latching themselves to us until we got married. As individuals, some of that stuff is great, but you have to learn how to adjust your defaults in your marriage. Everything that's good for you as a person is not good for your relationship. And you have to be willing to hear some of the good, the bad, and the ugly before it becomes beautiful.
Yeah. And amen to everything you just said. Do you feel like there's ever has there ever been a moment where either one of you, knowing what your past was, were afraid that you might bring some of that into your own marriage?
I was. And I never, the way that I would tell Tiffany is this: I was always willing to take the brunt of a disagreement. I would always, just say, take the high road on any situation. I wouldn't, because I would always say if my negative person meets your negative person, it's not going to be good. Not at all. So I know who that person is inside of me. That ain't not, he's asleep, but he's still alive. And every now and again, he try to rear his head up like, what's going on up there? I'll be like, nothing, be quiet. I go to myself, even after, and see, this is when he likes to really come up. When I go to myself, he tries to talk me into doing what I've just made myself not do. You know what I'm saying? She disrespecting you, all this type of stuff. So I already knew who I was back in the past should not meet my present wife. So I've always told her that. So be careful. I would say be careful, how you come at me, because both of us being like fully angry at each other is not going to be good. So
it was a protective mechanism for me, because it's like, let me be angry to kind of try to temper him down, to not be my mom, right? Because again, that's when little Tiff comes out, and he in counseling helped me like, well, first of all, we on the team. Like, why are you even trying to like argue him down?
Yeah.
Him out.
Yeah.
And that's where those communication tools came from. And honestly, I want to say when you're isolated, because we ended up being accountable to our pastors back home. About that 7 month time. So when we got in counseling to get some more tools, we also became accountable to our pastors, Pastor Brooks and Pastor Yogi. And they helped give us tools and they gave us a book about is sacred marriage. What if God meant you to be more holy than happy? And just learning about those negative behaviors that I was doing in the marriage, and where it's like, he's not my enemy. He's not your dad.
Yeah.
Push that little girl down. And we were able to get a community, because a couple months later, we moved out here to Arizona, and we're able to, like, again, marriage small groups. Our first time with y'all, we were like the stuff we fuss about, or the stuff that like I think is a big deal or he thinks is a big deal. This is what everyone goes through. So we got more equipped through our journey. And I'll be quite honest, I ended up having a sister come alongside of me, Tarila, and like kind of walking me through like prayer. You don't have to say everything that comes to your mouth. 1 Peter 3:1, when she was telling me is it important? Is it necessary? And we became accountable to other couples like the Colberts, Rutleys. Like we surrounded ourselves with tribe.
Yes.
Able to be open and be honest about like, okay, here's where we are. Because again, there's no matter what, and Pastor Erica talked about it on their Facebook Live today about that trauma memory. Though you are healed, you get new tools. Though the trauma is still there, and it's PTSD. It comes back. And so in a new way or in a new form, and the enemy knows your past, he knows your childhood trauma, so he throws those things up there. And so you need to be surrounded with community to help you even more perfect those things. And that is how we were able to get even better in it, because when we were just on our solo self in Detroit, like, yeah, we accountable to our pastors, but they busy too. We busy, like, hey, yep, okay. We were honest, but it wasn't consistent. So connected to that tribe,
Just one quick thing with tools. It's good to go get tools, but if you don't use the tools, you know what I'm saying. And then the people that surround you, that hold you accountable, you tell them that you do have these tools, and you go to different things with them. The weekend to remember things like this to get these tools. But the people that surround you, your accountability partners, make sure that you're using tools, because brand new tools without getting put to work is just a waste of time and effort.
So what do you say? Tiffany, you were saying that the loud voice is a trigger for you, right? What do you say to, and either one of you can answer this, to maybe a marriage where the man can't, that's how he knows how to handle the situation, is by raising the voice and not calming down until everybody obeys or comes into, what he wants.
I will say once AJ went to counseling and he learned more about my triggers and my past, the new triggers, AJ changed that. he allowed him to be a safe space for me. And this is how we stay here. We stay here. We have code words now where it's like, hey, we need to retreat and come back. And it wasn't like he's never lorded over me. He's never dictated at me. He's never been disrespectful at it. It was, his tone would just get elevated. And so once he learned those things and we were both committed, he lowered the tone. And he would preference.
Mm-hmm.
Or he would, babe, I'm saying this because of, babe, I'm saying this. And at the end of it, we're on the same team, okay? Like this is, like he was guarded on what he was doing. And eventually though, like until I got comfortable and trusted him with my vulnerability, like I didn't know that vulnerability is a process. I was able to be more vulnerable and let that wall down and let those, okay, he's really trying to he's trying to protect your heart. He's trying to protect, he doesn't want that PTSD to come up. So, yeah.
And I would tell the man that's involved in that, from my experience, that's a negative learned behavior. You probably saw that somewhere, you know, or that's what your family, your household was. And if it's in any way shows disrespect to your wife, if you see negative emotion from that, if you see crying or things like that, you should have to question. You should have to question that to say, open to change your method, because if she's willing to listen, everybody should have room to make mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
And if she's willing to listen, or they're willing, whether it's kids or not, whether they're willing to, if they're willing to listen, you should be able to just express yourself or be willing to learn how to express yourself at a better tone. You know what I'm saying?
That was real. I love that. That was very practical. And I think that applies to your relationship with your children, just so many different ways. Like you said, if you see that person, like you can see that you're tearing them down emotionally.
And that part too, especially if there's kids in the house, it's just us. Our kids are adults. But kids watch that stuff. They watch how you talk to your wife. They watch how mom talks to dad. And then that becomes a learned behavior where they grow, well, I've seen this in my house because that's how I learned it as well. Kids are paying attention. If you think they're not, they are.
Yeah.
So that's that's interesting to me, because so on one hand, you could be at that point where you are yelling and the wife is coming back, right? She's matching.
Her energy. I'm gonna match your energy.
so that's not good. But you could also be at that point where you're yelling and she's shrinking, and that's not good either, right? So what I hear you saying is, as you are communicating, whether you have an elevated tone or not, you need to be paying attention, and to the feeling and the reaction of the other person.
Yeah. And I know. Oh, sorry. I was going to say, Tiffany, I know one of the things that you had shared is, because to me, I feel like even though we're talking about this right now, couples don't always know when their communication style is reaching a dangerous point. So what would you say, like, how does a person know when because you talked about power and control, like there's like a cycle that you share with us, like it's a graphic that you have on your website where you kind of help people see the difference of how they know.
One is there's no respect. Like you are straight disrespectful, manipulation, if it's physical violence, if it's verbal. A lot of people feel like domestic violence is just physical. No, it's more than just the black eye. Your mouth can tear someone down. And within that, like one of the examples, like if you're like dogging them or cussing at them, you're not respectful whatsoever. And you're trying to like threaten them, you're isolating them from family, you're isolating them from friends. When they communicate their heart or they communicate their mind to you, it's called gaslighting. you basically, it's like it's kind of a Jedi mind. Like, you shrink them down to where their voice is not valid, where their feelings aren't valid, where like your way is the best way. You control with finances, you know, the blaming, you put the children in the middle to prove your point right. That's how you would know that you entered into uncharted territory.
Yeah, and I think as a couple, anything that if you are blatant in your disrespect, and because before we say something, we know what we're about to say.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
If it's okay for you to do something or say something to your spouse, then you have to do a self-check.
Mm-hmm.
Me and her started our foundation of oneness. You know what I'm saying? And we was team 3. You know, God, she, and me. That's what we built it on. So if I can't do it for me, for myself, if I can't hold in that anger for me, then I'm gonna hold it in because I love my wife. But if I'm so upset about the situation that I can't even hold it in for her, then I have to give it to God and I have to let go, because that's sowing those seeds of just a toxic relationship, because you should have some sort of filter, some boundary when it comes to disrespect, blatant disrespect for your spouse.
And if you like throwing stuff, if you're throwing stuff, you're punching walls, like in the middle of the arguments, that's instilling fear. Or I'm gonna clean my guns out in front of you. Like, I've heard stories of spouses using intimidation tactics like that.
Yes. Yeah. That word right there, intimidation. Yeah. Yeah. And I actually had wrote down both of you earlier when we first started having this conversation, you both kept talking about how like control is a trigger for you anytime you feel like you're being controlled, right? Because that reminds you of when you were a kid and what you witnessed and what you watched. Either you experienced it yourself or hear or seeing your mom experience that, so that became like this trigger for you. So any type of control that was being exerted over you. So just hearing you kind of talk through that right now, you just gave us some specific examples of what that control can actually look like in a relationship. Because again, we can assume that people know these things, but they don't. Not everybody understands, because you know what you were taught growing up or what you witnessed, you feel like that's what's normal. Like what happened in your house. Because I can remember being a kid going over to people's houses and thinking, oh, not everybody does such and such like we do at our house, because I just assumed everybody did it the way we do it at our house, right? And so now as adults, there might be some things that we have to unlearn because that was what was normal for us. Is there anything else that comes to your mind around some things that you had to unlearn over this last 5 years so that you could have a healthy marriage?
I mentioned the part of everything doesn't have to be said.
Mm-hmm.
You be slow to speak and quick to hear.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of my triggers would just come as a reaction.
Yeah.
And like, especially with the control, he would just be giving me practical advice. And like, you just want me to do it your way. But when I stop to truly hear what he's saying and hearing the heart of the message, because one of the things he was saying in our early years was, I'm not against you. We're a team. I'm not against you. So once I got healed from those new triggers and starting to listen, I was able to hear the heart of the message, where like now I tell him, like, okay, hey babe, so what you think about this? Hey, how you doing? Like, I'm able to value his voice and not look at it as control, and to truly understand how this is going, and to sit and like, I think a lot, but when it comes to our marriage, it's one of those, I already know where we at now. Like, he don't have to get those disclaimers no more. I'm team, I'm this. It is, okay, I already know he's coming from this place. So if there's something in me that don't really agree with that, then it got to be an issue on me, because he's sold out to Christ and me, and that's what he's saying. Like, I'm team us. Don't ever forget that.
Yeah, and I think, and I mean, and just a real quick plug on, like with the technology age, a lot of people got to worry. I mean, it's another category of control is it's digital. When you're tracking people on your phones, people's phones, and it's just
putting GPSs on
GPS on cars, right? It's a whole lot
checking
of
search history on internet.
Yeah, and so you just got to be. If you feel that you have to do that to a person, it's time for a self-check, because you really have to ask yourself, why am I doing this? You'll find out it probably even isn't that person. I've never cheated on Tiff. I've never given her a reason to think anything like that.
Right.
I'd have to say, babe, I have never even done anything close to that. So why are you treating?
Because in the beginning, like year one, I was like, yeah, let me see your phone. I'm gonna do random phone checker. Let me see your phone. And he
That is hilarious. So I really like what you said, AJ, in that, and I can see it in what Tiff is saying even now, and that is you would reinforce, that, hey, we are in this together, right? It was like you were casting a togetherness vision, right, to kind of overcome those negative thoughts or the past that would try and come up. And, that's just in line with the word where you just, speaking the vision. So I really like that.
And I think it's important to not just say a thing without following through with action. It's easy to tell somebody you love them because those are just words, but you have to show them through your actions. I can see her getting irritated about things, and that doesn't mean that I didn't get irritated because she's gotten irritated. I think the maddest I've ever been with Tiffany in our marriage was because she just didn't default to the team aspect. And I'm like, why do we have to waste this much energy on this? And I'm it to her, but this is what I'm thinking in the inside. It's like, let's just fix it.
And we would have those conversations like, it's so uncomfortable walking around intentionally trying to be mad at you. Like, I want to go back to having fun. We laugh a lot. I'm trying to like, mean face. Stand in the room, guest room.
So I used to do a lot of disclaimers because I wanted her to understand. And that's what I called them. I said, and again, being the person that's willing to not be mad when you want to be mad. Sometimes you can, and my conversations was with God sometimes like, okay, I know I'm doing this for you, but sometimes I get tired of taking the high road. And these are my conversations with Christ. Not that I'm mad at her, but if he's my counselor, I need to be able to vent to him. He knows what's going on anyway. I need to feel better about it. But at the end of the day, I'm like David. I call him my David moment. Like, hey, she's getting on my nerves. Like, literally, I have to take this high road. I hear what you're saying, but sometimes I don't feel like that. But I love her. I love you. I'm going to do it anyway. And that gives me my charge for maybe the next moment. I can't say for the next lifetime, but at least for the next moment.
And I've also heard too with different couples, like that may have been like what I feel like God told me to do this. Holy Spirit is not going to tell you to disrespect your wife. Holy Spirit is not going to confirm any negative action. If you hear that voice and you're like, yeah, I'm going to the counselor. Yeah, I'm going to my counselor, Holy Spirit. He counsels me. If he's telling you to continue that negative behavior towards your spouse, men or women, that's your voice, okay? The voice of Holy Spirit is do the opposite of what you feel to reconcile, because he wants your marriage to win.
Amen. He wants your marriage to win. Amen. Okay, so I guess
you have any questions?
I didn't see any questions. So if you all have questions, go ahead and ask them. This is a great time to ask your questions while we have the two of them.
People are loving the conversation.
Yeah.
So
did you want to read some of those comments?
Just a couple. Well, this was this was a while back in the timeline, but Rama says Tiffany was making it known. Come on, sis, with the flirtation.
With the flirtation.
Right.
Yeah, like, because you made it known that you were interested. You didn't pretend.
Then it says, words to remember, I ain't no thirst cup.
We need to have that on the t-shirt. I ain't no thirst cup.
Angela Smith says, the forehead kiss, no one can resist. What communication techniques do you use? She said code words, got it. So you guys use any other communication techniques other than your code words?
One of the techniques that the coverts actually taught us was that touch. When we have a hard conversation, look each other in the eyes. And when it's getting rough, touch that spot you know.
I'm just kidding. All right.
That's really, really good.
That'll bring the room temperature down.
That is good. I mean, just like that touch, like, because it's like, because I do feel like it's just like a reminder. Hey, we on the same team. Like, yeah, that's really good.
Absolutely.
That's
okay.
Really
touch. All right. Anything else?
That's basically it.
Okay.
And honestly, I can't thank, like, glory to God. We have more good moments. We do bad. And we've gotten to this point now where we're much better communicators. And one of the things is that we aligned on is that we weren't going to just argue or fuss about the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what's the resolution? And trying and like problem solving that has been key.
And then being able to have what we started off calling a truth moment, or I think we learned a different word for it with weekend to remember. What was that? Is this a safe place?
Safe space.
But basically what that is when you come into them, and you can make, of course, your own word up, but when you come into your spouse, and I'll be like, hey, babe, it's like, just a truth moment, so, and that lets her know that what he's about to talk about, he needs to address this. And I only bring up truth moments with her, or if it's somebody close to her family, you know what I'm saying? But that's to like say, hey, hear me out. Don't fuss at me. You know what I'm saying? Don't think I'm attacking you. You kind of upset me on this one. Did you mean to? I don't try to answer her questions. Did you mean to do that? Because if she say, well, yeah, then we need to talk about why. You see what I'm saying? Things like that. Because you gotta dig down to the root of it and get rid of the root, because it's gonna keep growing if it's not pulled up. So you gotta have those moments and the time where like, hey, defense is down, just listen to me.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk this out. You know what I'm saying?
So good.
So that a thought came to me.
Mm-hmm.
I want you guys to talk about the moment in your marriage when Tiffany said, hey, I got a counselor, you want to come? How did you get there, and what was that like?
Come on, AJ, give it to us.
It was awkward, but if that's what she needed from me, then okay. Because I figured it wasn't the mindset of what could it hurt. It was like, I'm looking to make this better, and it helped me understand her more. And as the years went by, I was able to latch in on things that was helpful to her. Even reading her story in the book helped me even touch up even more areas of our relationship, because again, I could figure things out like, oh, that's why you react like that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I used to look, I'll be reading the book and I would like, the manuscript, I stop and come ask her and just run in like, hey, so you mean, is this why you react like that? And she'd be like, she kind of give me the story, and I'm like, oh, okay. So again, and I adjust myself. You know what I'm saying?
Because can I give a quick example of that? We as soon as we got married, it was the first Sunday. We sitting together. Go ahead, put your arm around. He first Sunday we married. We married. Sitting in church, he got an arm around. He came off the praise team, sat on the side. So, he just sat out from singing. You did good, baby. It was so he leaned in. I was like, oh, he wants some more. We gonna do this in church? Okay, we married. Like, you need to put some gum in your mouth.
That's real talk. That's love for real. That's love for real.
He was like, and he whispered, he was like, get out your head. You my wife. We supposed to be team. I'm supposed to be able to tell you these things and nobody else. Like, just don't love me and it's
AJ is real. He's like, we ain't playing.
I'm laughing so hard because I've been told that before.
living together, I would leave for work. He'd be like, come back in the house. And then he'd taking a lint brush, like, nah. And it would be like, I didn't hear husband. I heard Tiffany is not representing the family well from my dad. Because again, you grew up in the preacher kid, you always in the spotlight. So now I'm like messing up. And I'm supposed to say, I'm sorry so many times. Like the first year, like, I'm sorry. Like, I'm sorry. And he's like, why are you going? Because I kept defaulting back to that little girl. So him being able to go to the counseling helped. And it helped me like, oh.
Yeah, I was like, man, you don't have to be sorry. I'm not saying you done something so wrong. If you got 1 million lint balls on the back of your sweater, you might not saw it. But if you my wife, I'm not about to let you go out there looking, with the old sweater look. Let me go up there and hit you up right quick. And she be like, I didn't even know they had one of these. Yes, they do, and we gonna use it.
Tiffany Mensah.
but I mean, and again, a part of that was me because I don't like just say the little breath mint part. If you're not her friend, if you don't tell her, and I feel like I don't want my wife walking around here smelling with the hungry breath or nothing, and you represent in a bad way. But when you think about my wife, I want you to think about everything excellent. You know what I'm saying? So if you're right around now, if I don't know. But if you right there by me and I begin to know.
Alicia Melton said, that's covering. That's a good way to think about it. So all of us, husbands and wives, when your spouse tell you need a mint, just think that's covering.
See, our code is we just do this.
Or we pretend like we passing out. Like.
Hey, so we did have a question.
We actually had two questions. That were posted, but okay. You go ahead and read that one.
So this one's for AJ. Suggestions on how you can get men to be willing to go to counseling.
Yeah, I was actually thinking about that, AJ. Why were you willing to go to counseling? Did it not seem like a big deal to you? Like what's been your experience with other men going to counseling, or why men don't go to counseling?
For that question, that was part of the way God was preparing me to be in a relationship like this. But to be honest, Proverbs, what's that again?
Multitude of counselors?
No, for some reason it escapes me, and I usually have it by heart. But anyway, when God tells you to love your wife like you love yourself, see, I look inward.
That's good.
So if she's asking me for this and she wants to be understood better, then I have to give her that because I put myself in her shoes to say, hey, I need you to go to counseling with me. And if I needed her to do that, I would want her to do that. You see what I'm saying? So I put myself in her shoes. I love my wife like I love myself. I love everything about me. I want to be heard. I want to be understood. I want to be helped. I want to be comforted. So I do that to my wife. And so when she mentioned the counseling thing, it was, like I said, it was a little like, this is new for me, but if this is what you need, okay, let's go. And I learned some stuff, and I learned, and sometimes counseling is not about, honestly, always about the marriage itself. It's about underlining things that you yourself have picked, negative learned behavior or false expectations that you didn't know you had, or you do know you have and you don't want to let go. So it's about the individual as well as marriage.
Totally agree. Totally. So what do you think? Like if one spouse won't go, would you just go
Yeah.
and get your own counseling? Yeah.
Yes, because you have to develop yourself and
Mm-hmm.
some techniques. Maybe there's some wisdom they can give you on even how to communicate better or how to approach that situation more. A lot of times when once we got our tools, it was AJ was like, okay, we cool. Like we got to a place, okay, we're good. AJ dropped off. But I knew I would talk to him. I was like, hey, new trigger, I'm gonna call Napoleon. AJ, like, do what you do. Like, it's cool. Like he supported it. So it wasn't that we even got to continue this together. Like we got what we needed. Hey, new trigger alert. I need to check in. And it wasn't that I needed new tools. I just needed to know which tool to pull out of my arsenal to apply to this situation.
That's good. That's so good. People are, I mean, y'all are dropping gems right now for sure. It's a blessing.
So here's one other question. We are at the top of the hour, but I'm gonna ask this one. Any advice for a relationship with a narcissistic spouse?
Narcissistic spouse. Because that is it.
I had to look up that word actually. I mean, I know what it means, but I had to look it up to see exactly what it means.
I don't know. A lot of that has to do with being self-centered.
Yeah.
So, and I'm thinking, which is why I'm like,
yeah.
Part of it is what's their background, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because those ghosts of our past creep in.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're thinking about what their background is, did they grow up in that? Are there other people around them in their circles that experience that or have that? Start there. Start with your prayer strategy about those things that you see.
Yeah. Yeah.
If the spouse is open, I don't know if they're open for communicate, like accountability with other couples to talk about it. I would also recommend that person who's asking a question or who they know somebody or they're asking it for them, you go get counseling as well and talk to someone more about it. I would need to know more context, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Then with the counseling, being able to see if that spouse is open to counseling and if they're open to, to go together to see it's not one response for that. There's so many different angles. But go ahead.
And I think like other things, I think a narcissistic person, sometimes you have to understand where they're coming from with it.
Mm-hmm.
That could be their defense mechanism.
Yeah.
Sometimes if you felt like you were nothing, going like you were nothing.
Yeah.
To become something is my everything. And I am everything because that's all I was told I wasn't. Now I am.
Yeah, that's good.
Look at me. See me now, I got this car, I got this house, I got this trophy wife. Can't nobody tell me nothing. This is what my life is because y'all told me I wasn't gonna be nothing. But see, that narcissistic person is still living in self mode. If you are married, he has to still have value in that, but he has to learn how to decrease he or she have to decrease those values because it may have meant a lot as the individual, but now you're married. So sometimes in different areas here, you have to turn it down. You might even turn a little bit up in me, give me some confidence. You know what I'm saying?
And to piggy on that is what is the fruit on the other side of that narcissism, right? Is on the other side of that narcissistic person, are they doing any of those things on the power and control wheel?
Mm-hmm. I'm gonna go back to that for them.
Yeah, and I was thinking the exact same thing for on what AJ was saying, and that is it could definitely be a protective mechanism. A lot of negative, even in what you guys have talked about. It's like you were trying to control your situation based on what you came out of, right? I don't want this. I don't want to be like that. And so a lot of our behavior is what we've learned or And to get away from it, you have to unlearn it. And, things like counseling, learning new tools, communication, all that is necessary. And, like AJ said, but unless you are willing, then, learning all the tools you want don't help, right?
Gotta use them. You gotta use those tools. And that love and that value for your spouse should be able to, get you to go in. But a lot of times, like you said, talking about toxic marriages and things like that, you don't have to be like signs of a toxic marriage. Like, honestly, you don't have to be married to notice signs of a toxic marriage. A lot of us, before we said I do, we knew.
Yeah. We knew.
We thought that we were going to change that person, or we decided to ignore it, or we wanted to have faith, but faith without works is dead. So that even, you see what I'm saying? So, and now we have to figure out why we made the choices that we made and what we're going to do about the choices. You see what I'm saying? So,
right.
And just to caveat on that, if there are single people who are watching, since we opened it up, pay attention to those red flags. Educate yourself on the power and control wheel as well, because you can vet out different signs even before you go into being, because once you're married, you're in that covenant. Not saying that once you're in, when abuse is in there, that's a whole nother ball game. But if you are single, you can prevent it beforehand if you're aware and you're educated on it to be able to spot those signs and get out of there quicker than having all go down this rabbit hole of toxicity. Yes.
Right.
That's so good.
Yep. And I feel like you need to be willing to, if you want to be in a relationship with someone that is triggering you, or that has their own triggers that are going to these levels, you got to be willing, in my opinion, to talk it out, to say, I'm noticing this, right? And so we need to deal with it, or I think we need to talk through it. And if they're not willing, then don't get married, because if they're not willing now, getting married is not going to change their willingness.
It's not.
No patience, no nothing.
Look, some real quick wisdom. I believe that culturally we start out marriages with the wrong, shorting ourselves on the buy-in anyway. Because culturally, we think and then some of these are poker terms, but when you sit down at the table and you ante up, when you sit at the marriage table and you ante up, if you're only considering putting in 50-50, you shorten yourself. Because think about it like this: if you got your chips stacked and you're just 100% of yourself there on both sides, 100, and you only decide to put 50 in, something's wrong. When you have to go all in, you got to put all your chips in, and them chips can't be for you. You would think that 100% is for you, but listen to it. I'm all in 100% in my marriage for myself. That don't sound right either. That 100% has to be for your spouse. You see what I'm saying? For you to be what they need you to be, for you to be willing to unconditionally love, meaning any preconceived notion that you had before you got married, you need to erase that whiteboard. Because if y'all didn't figure it out on your own, what works for both of y'all, it may get some rocky ground in there. You know what I'm saying? And then you got to understand this, and I'm done. Even in your buy-in, if I'm going all in, what if you're in a marriage where my all in is 100, but my spouse's all in is, say, 80? She putting in everything he or she has, but it's not 100. Are you willing to allow that growth of that 20%? Or on the other hand, is that spouse even willing for you to grow that additional 20% to meet that 100? You know what I'm saying? So a lot of this stuff is using wisdom before you get tied up like that, and knowing how to walk things down, how to ask the right questions, knowing how to better pick up somebody that's closely knitted to what you believe.
And sorry, one other aspect that's not on the power and control wheel, that is also another form of abuse, is also spiritual abuse. Because don't use the Bible out of context. While you get your way or your opinion over trumps your spouse's opinion.
That's so good. That's so good. Because yeah, people definitely in marriage, you get desperate. What did the Bible say?
And that goes along with what I always tell all the young couples, and that is, do you want to be right?
Yeah.
Or do you want to be married? Right? Because even if you are right, there's a way to be right. Right?
Yes.
And so just go into marriage with the intent to be married, not to wield your knowledge and your intellect over your spouse.
Yeah.
Also, too, parents who have teenagers, teen dating violence is on the rise as well. Get educated to know what those signs look like, especially in the digital, especially in social media world. Like, know what that looks like even with your kids.
Amen. Like, we could just, of course, this could be like a 3-hour conversation, right? And we have enjoyed it. And
stuff that I want to say because it's just so much to unpack.
I totally agree. Yeah.
Women, period. We start off different scales. I mean, different ends of the spectrum. And just real quick, women want one man, and they play with dolls. They may be even open for kids, and they play house. So that's family. Men, we don't come up like that. We want more than one woman because that's what we're taught. It's cheered upon. So again, just a whole lot of how women think and come up as a youth and how we come up as youth. It should let you know that there's going to be some friction, but you have to be willing to work that out as a team.
And Amen. Amen.
Amen.
So I definitely, I'm so glad we had this conversation, and the comments are just confirming that this is a conversation that these are the kind of conversations we definitely need to be having. So we will have you guys come in, and we will do this more. We will have more conversations also with some other mental health professionals, and help us, because to me, especially in the Christian community, in the Black community, I wish that we were having more of these conversations, because they will keep us moving forward. And people, it's really hard to be spiritually healthy if you're not emotionally healthy. And that's what we've been talking about today, is really the emotional things that we all have to learn how to deal with. We have to learn how to connect with our spouse emotionally, before we can have any other type of relationship with them. If we don't understand them emotionally, it's going to be very difficult for us to have a really strong marriage. So I really thank both of you. And I know, we didn't even get a chance to talk about, like, specifically about the book, but I want to make sure that people know about your book, Tiffany, so y'all can see her book. So you released this book, Forgotten, a memoir, living in the shadows of domestic violence. So tell us, just tell them real quickly about the book and where they can get their copy of it.
The book, you can get it on my website, TiffanyMensah.com, or Amazon, Google, Apple, it's all there. It's my life. So it talks about right on set, from the time that I witnessed the abuse to the journey from a child, teenager, adult, the struggles. It's more detailed, like raw transparency of what I went through in my life with all of the relationships that in my journey to wholeness. And I'm really intentional about even taking you on the therapy couch with me, because a lot of times we have this picture in our head about what therapy is. Like, oh, it's feel good, or like, no, I don't feel like going. Like, you got to be committed to the process. It's going to be some days that suck, like that you don't want to go, you don't want to hear what they have to say, but you have to stay committed to it. And on the other side of all that therapy, on the other side of me getting over. So I feel like the ultimate church hurt I experienced was, okay, Lord, this your servant, he preaching thus saith the Lord on Sunday, but he was just beating mama last night. I couldn't connect. When I got 18, I'm out deuces. And it talks about my whole journey of even coming to a relationship with Christ to separate. My biggest question was, and a lot of people even have questions in today's society, is if God's so good, why is this happening? I had to go through that journey of learning the humanity is separate from God's divinity. So I take you through all of that in my book, and also to show how I rewrote the narrative that I made that decision as a teen that my marriage and my family would not be what I saw growing up, into the fruits of this handsome in here.
Young fruit sisters. One quick note about the book. A lot of people might think at the beginning of it, like it's like this gory read.
Chapter 1 is the trauma scene.
It goes through like maybe the introduction in chapter 1. It has a little some trauma in it, but right after that, again, it's about Tiffany experiencing that and the journey she went through with that dysfunction until she realized she had this dysfunction, and onto, you know, the victory that came at the end. But a lot of people are kind of, I don't know, it seemed like a hard read. No, it's actually a funny and very interesting book. Okay.
Yeah. So I want to say something because I have read the book. I haven't completely finished it, but this is what stands out to me about the book. I feel like it's written from a place of healing. It's not written from a place of resentment. Let me get back at everybody, you know, because of the childhood that I had. It's really you talking about your perspective as a kid, which I think adds a whole nother conversation that we really don't get to hear from children who have witnessed this and how it impacts their life. And so that's one of the things I love about it. I learned why you know so much music. That's how we first bonded with the two of y'all is through music. And so it was fun. It was a fun read. And it was, you know, it was the reality of the life that you had, but it was just very, it's not maybe what people think it is. I think it's a very powerful book. And I highly, highly recommend it. And one of the things I want to make sure that I say this, for the people that are watching that right now, we would love for you to share this video, because this is, again, I have wanted to talk about this for like a year and a half, but I'm just gonna be honest. I have been afraid of opening a door for people that they maybe weren't going to have the resources that they needed to really, okay, well, now I know this, now what do I do about it? But Tiffany actually reached out and was like, this is something that I really like. If you guys want to know what type of conversation we would love for you guys to have, this is the one we want to have. And so when she sent me that message, or she sent it to Angie, I think she actually sent it to Angie, to me, that was just like, you know what, it's time. It's really, well, it's past time. It's past time for us to be talking about this. And so we don't want you to just watch it. This was not just for us to be entertained and to laugh, but it's really about us helping start a conversation with other couples, with each other, with, you know, maybe in your own household, maybe there's something you've been feeling for a long time, that there is something not quite right in your relationship with your spouse. And maybe what's at the heart or at the root of it is that there is some type of trauma that you have experienced. And Tiffany and AJ have started a nonprofit, right? It's a nonprofit organization called the Doves Network. So you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so started the Doves Network, and it's basically the what's next from the book. I didn't want to just have this book and it was like, how can we get involved? Because what I went through is called childhood domestic violence. There's less than 15% awareness that that's even a thing, and even the effects on what happens to kids who grew up in these environments. And from the book, we wanted to start this nonprofit to drive awareness to that and educate people on the impact that it has with kids. But from that, domestic violence is also connected, because that's the root of why this even exists. And so we are here to be a bridge to be with the direct service providers, educate churches, schools, communities of color, honestly, because we don't talk about domestic violence in our communities a lot in the churches. And we want to be able to, from not just, I feel like where your misery is also your purpose. And it wasn't a mistake that I grew up as a preacher's kid in this type of environment. Yeah. So I also see the spiritual foundation, went through the healing aspect of it. So being able to, and also being working in ministry for the past couple years too, being able to go and give education to not just the child, but adults together and blend those in, So being able to give those numbers, resources, here's where you can go, being able to partner with people who are talking about it, because if you're not in it, you may know someone in it. That's the sad statistic of it. And with COVID-19, when I wrote this book, I didn't know COVID-19. When I got the release here to launch, I didn't know COVID-19 was going to be here. Domestic violence has gone up 30%. It's that time. And unfortunately, a good friend of mine, her best friend, was just killed last week because of domestic violence. Out of it. And just listening to that family and hearing their story about, y'all, we got to talk about this and we have to share. And again, we keep turning a blind eye. It's not going to go away. Get equipped. Don't judge. Why didn't you just leave? It's not as easy to just leave. That is one of the most dangerous times. So you need to have a community. You need to have resources around you that can help you safety plan and be able to get you the support you need for yourself and your families. And being able to, that is why Doves Network exists, is because we want to shine a light on this in communities of color, faith-based organizations, being able to also show the kids that they're not forgotten. That was a lot of the reason why I wrote that book, is because we're hearing more of these stories where either the women or the men are being killed and the kids are left behind with no parents. But who cares for them? Who cares for their soul? And a lot of times, because in the 90s when my mom would leave my dad back and forth, they cared for her and was more empathetic to her and her journey versus the child. And a lot of things that we see from kids, it's estimated 1 billion kids are growing up in these homes across the world. But 40 million adults went through it and grew up in these homes. So that means if you're a part of that statistic, you may be in a marriage, you may be in a relationship, your relationship, like if you don't get the help, then you continue to see what you saw. So we're big advocates on mental health, being able to give the resources. We have a resource section for counseling on our website, dovesnetwork.org, where you want to take the steps to talk about it just for your own healing, to start that process. You can have a couple of recommendations there to start your own search. Every different category you can think, it's there, provided for you. Here you go. So that is why Doves Network exists.
All right, and I dropped the web address for Doves Network right there in the comment section. So you can go on her website. You can find out all the information that she just shared, all those different resources. That power and control wheel that she talked about earlier is also right there on the website. So
thank you for doing this. For being a part of the community that is bringing a solution. And one of the, I guess, scary things about, domestic violence, I think it's male dominated mostly. And I'm praying that, that side of things we would start to bring resources to help, men start to realize and talk to each other, right? Go to counseling, empathize with their spouse, these tools. So thank you for doing what you're doing.
No problem.
And thank you for being a part of our conversation series. This has been such a blessing to us. Again, you can get Tiffany's book at tiffanyMensah.com, and you can learn more about their organization at dovesnetwork.org. It's all in the comments.